Hey, welcome back. Before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it for a second. When was the last time you looked at someone else's life? Maybe on LinkedIn, maybe at a dinner party, maybe just scrolling at midnight, and felt this quiet, heavy thing in your chest. Like, why is everyone else figuring it out except me? If you know that feeling, this episode is for you. Today I'm going to tell you a story. It's fictional, but it's built from something very real. And after the story, we're going to break down the psychology behind it, because I think understanding why we feel this way is the first step to actually moving through it. Alright, let's go. His name is Thomas. Thomas is 39 years old, and on a grey Tuesday evening in Manchester, he's sitting alone in a corner booth at his local pub, The Anchor, nursing a pint he's barely touched. Outside, the rain is doing what Manchester rain always does. Not dramatic, not heavy, just persistent. Like it has nowhere better to be. Thomas has his phone face down on the table. He flipped it over 20 minutes ago, after spending too long looking at photos from a university reunion he didn't attend. Jamie, who used to borrow his lecture notes and never give them back, apparently just sold his second startup. Sophie got promoted to regional director. Even Carl, who failed his dissertation twice, somehow owns a property portfolio in Leeds. And Thomas? Thomas works in admin at a logistics company in Salford. Same desk for 9 years. Same commute. Same Tuesday pint at The Anchor. He's not unhappy, exactly. But he's not anything, either. And somehow, that feels worse. That morning had been particularly rough. His manager, a man 10 years younger than him, who wore slim-fit shirts and said things like, "Let's circle back on that," had pulled him aside before the team meeting. Tom, I'll be honest with you. We need people who are hungry, who want to grow. At your stage. I just want to make sure you're still engaged. At your stage. Thomas had nodded, said all the right things, then sat through the meeting not hearing a single word, because those 3 syllables, at your stage, were playing on a loop in his head. On the train home, standing because there were no seats, he thought. Is this it? Did I miss the window? Is 39 just too late? That night, in his flat in Stretford, a 1-bedroom he'd meant to move out of 3 years ago, he sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the wall. His mind went somewhere dark. Not for long, but long enough to frighten him. What pulled him back was a postcard on his dresser. His mum had sent it from a holiday in Cornwall last summer. Her handwriting, slightly shaky now, saying, "Thinking of you, love. Hope you're being kind to yourself." He held it for a long time. A few days later, Thomas ran into an old colleague, Diane, at the Arndale market. She looked different. Lighter, somehow. They grabbed a coffee. He asked how she was doing, expecting the usual British non-answer, but instead, she actually told him, "I was made redundant at 40. Absolute nightmare. 6 months, I barely left the house. Then my sister convinced me to just try one thing. I started doing bookkeeping freelance, just 1 client. Now I've got 12. Thomas looked at her. "Were you not terrified?" She laughed. "Every single day. Still am, honestly. But being terrified and moving is better than being terrified and standing still." Thomas walked slowly. Not because he had a plan, but because something had shifted, just slightly, in the way he was framing his own story. He'd spent years thinking he was running out of time. What if he'd just been in the wrong chapter? That evening, he found an old notebook in a drawer. Black cover, slightly battered. He'd started it at 26. There were half-formed business ideas, sketches, lists of things he wanted to try. Somewhere in the middle, the pages just stopped. Blank from page 47 onwards. He remembered why he'd stopped. His dad's redundancy, the mortgage pressure, the quiet decision to choose safe over everything else. He didn't start writing again that night. He just left the notebook open on the kitchen table, which, if you know anything about psychology, is actually a bigger deal than it sounds. Okay, so that's Thomas. And look, I know that story isn't a fairy tale. There's no massive breakthrough, no instant transformation. But that's kind of the point. Because real change doesn't usually look like a lightning bolt. It looks like leaving a notebook open on a table. So let's talk about what's actually going on, psychologically, when we feel what Thomas feels. What Thomas is experiencing is something psychologists call an existential crisis. And it's incredibly common in the late 30s and early 40s. It's not a sign that you've failed. It's actually a sign that your brain is doing something quite sophisticated. It's comparing the life you're living against the life you once imagined. That gap, researchers sometimes call it the expectation gap, feels like pain. But it's actually information. It's your inner self saying, something needs to shift. The psychologist Erik Erikson mapped out the stages of adult development, and around your late 30s and 40s, you hit what he called the tension between generativity and stagnation. Generativity means feeling like you're contributing, building, leaving something meaningful behind. Stagnation is that going through the motions feeling, the sense of being stuck. Thomas was deep in stagnation. But here's the thing Erikson also said. This tension isn't permanent. It's a stage. And recognizing it is the first move out of it. Leon Festinger's social comparison theory tells us that humans naturally measure themselves against others. It's hardwired. We've always done it. But social media has turned that dial up to 11. Because what you see on LinkedIn or Instagram isn't someone's life. It's their highlight reel. Thomas saw Jamie's startup exit. He didn't see the failed relationships, the anxiety, the years of doubt that came before it. Comparison is only fair when you have the full picture. And you never have the full picture. I know this can sound like a cliché, but there's genuine research behind it. Psychologist Herminia Ibarra, in her work on career change, found that identity doesn't have to be fixed in your 20s. She calls it working identity, the idea that who you are professionally and personally can be shaped and reshaped through small actions, not grand reinventions. You don't need a master plan. You need a first step. Leaving the notebook open. Getting a coffee with Diane. Saying yes to one small thing. And look, history is full of people who figured it out late. Vera Wang didn't design her first dress until 40. Alan Rickman didn't get his big break until 42. Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species at 50. Late isn't the same as lost. So, if you're somewhere in that Thomas headspace right now, if 39 feels like a number that's judging you, I just want to say this. The fact that you're asking these questions means you're paying attention. And paying attention is the beginning of everything. You don't have to have it figured out. You just have to leave the notebook open.